It's 1984, and a teenager in northern Germany is doing the thing half of us did at some point. He's got the radio on, a blank cassette in the deck, and his finger hovering over record, waiting for the song he likes to come back around. When it does, he hits the button. And here's the small, careful thing he does that nobody tells him will matter. He trims the edges. He cuts the DJ off the front, he cuts the DJ off the back. He wants a clean tape, no chatter, just the music, the way you'd want it if you were going to listen to this thing 100 times in your bedroom. He has no idea he's just erased the only piece of information that could ever name the song. Because the DJ was the one who would have said the title. The DJ was the one who would have said the band. By cutting the talk, he kept the song and threw away its name. And that little cassette, with one nameless track sitting between a song by The Cure and a song by XTC, is going to sit in a drawer for 20 years before it ruins thousands of people's sleep. That's where this starts. Not with a puzzle somebody built on purpose, with a kid making a mixtape and being slightly too neat about it. And if that were the only time the internet did this, it'd just be a sad little story about a tape. It isn't. It happened 4 times. Same shape every time. The answer was sitting in plain sight the whole way through. The other songs on that tape, the ones he didn't trim into oblivion, are the only reason anyone could even guess the era. There was a track by the Eurythmics, something by Adam and the Ants, a bit of Secret Service. The whole mixtape was a little time capsule of what was on the radio in the early 80s, and for years that was the best clue anyone had. Not the song itself, its neighbors. People were dating the mystery by the company it kept, like reading the rings of a tree to figure out a year nobody wrote down. In 2007, his sister uploaded a digital copy to a few forums, asking if anyone could tell her what it was. Nobody could. It was a moody, jangly, slightly gothic new wave track. The kind of thing that sounds like it should have been a minor hit you half remember, except nobody remembered it because as far as the entire internet was concerned, it had never officially existed. No artist, no title, no record of a release. A song that was clearly real, clearly recorded by real people in a real studio, and yet completely unfindable. People started calling it the most mysterious song on the internet, and the name stuck because it was true. The lyrics were a mess of guesses. The opening line got heard as like the wind, or blind the wind, or the sun will never shine, depending on who you asked and how cooked their headphones were. Whole communities formed around arguing about a single syllable. By 2019, it had gone properly viral. One guy posted it to 44 different subreddits in a single push. A YouTuber made a video. It got its own subreddit, its own Discord, its own circle of obsessives who would analyze the synth patch and try to figure out which exact model of keyboard made that warm, sad pad sound, as if the brand of the synthesizer was going to hand them the ban. For 17 years, nothing. And then, in November 2024, a Reddit user going by Marigin1412 did the thing that none of the audio forensics ever managed. He stopped listening to the song, he went looking for the people. He was reading about an old German music festival for small local bands, and he found a newspaper article about a group from Kiel called FAX who'd won a talent contest in Bremen in 1984. He recognized one of the members from another band that played that same festival. So he just emailed the guy and asked if he had any old recordings lying around. And one of them was called Subways of Your Mind. That was it. That was the whole thing. 17 years of spectrograms and theories, and the answer was a man named Michael Heydrich who'd had the tape in a box the entire time and had absolutely no idea his teenage band was internet famous. The singer, Ture Rukwart, the bassist, Norbert Zierman, the drummer, Hans Reimer Sievers, 4 guys from northern Germany who recorded a song in the mid-80s, played a few shows and got on with their lives, completely unaware that for almost 2 decades, strangers all over the world had been treating their forgotten demo like the Zodiac cipher. And then they got to live the strangest second act you could write for a band. They registered the song, they sat down and played it for German radio acoustic, the first time some of them had touched it in close to 40 years. People started talking about a reunion, a song they'd written as kids, given up on and forgotten, suddenly handed back to them in middle age with a worldwide audience already attached. Most bands chase that their whole lives and never get it. These guys got it by accident, decades late, because one teenager taped them off the radio and one stranger refused to let it go. Now, here's what I want you to notice, because it's the thing this whole video is actually about. The song was never hidden. The band wasn't in witness protection. The tape existed. The men existed. They were findable the entire time. The internet just didn't have a road that led from the song to them. The information was all there, sitting in the open, completely disconnected from itself. Hold on to that, because it happens again. It happens every single time. Now you'd think lightning doesn't strike the same way twice. It struck almost identically. Different song, different different country, same impossible problem, and a much stupider ending. This one's funnier, and I mean that as a compliment to the universe. In 2021, a guy in Spain uploaded a 17-second clip to a song identification site. He couldn't remember where he'd gotten it. Said he'd found it buried in an old DVD backup, probably from back when he was first teaching himself to record audio, and this little fragment had just been left over. Bad quality. 80s maybe. He honestly didn't think it'd be hard to identify. It was a glossy, hooky synth-pop thing with a chorus that burrowed straight into your skull. People misheard the lyric, as everyone knows that, and the nickname was born, even though it would later turn out the actual line was slightly different. And just like the German song, it should have been easy. It sounds like a hit. It sounds like something that played in a mall in 1986. But there was no artist, no title, no trace, so the same machine spun up. A subreddit with tens of thousands of people, years of theories. Maybe it was a jingle, maybe it was library music, the stock stuff they license out for commercials, maybe it was an MTV bumper. People were sincerely losing sleep over 17 seconds of audio. And the way it broke is so stupid and so perfect that I need you to brace for it. Somebody was watching an old, low-budget 80s adult film. The kind of film that does not get a Criterion edition. And in the background of a scene, they heard it. The song. They scrambled to the credits, cross-referenced some names against a music rights database, and there it was. The track was called Ulterior Motives, written by twin brothers Christopher and Philip Booth, who in their 20s had been a couple of broke aspiring musicians in Los Angeles. Couldn't get a record deal. So they did what you did when you had songs and no buyers in the 80s. They licensed them out to whoever would pay, which in their case was the adult film industry. Those same brothers later went on to direct paranormal horror documentaries for the Sci-Fi Channel, and they found out their lost teenage song was the white whale of an entire internet subculture, because fans started leaving comments under their documentary posts, begging them to release it, and they had no clue what anyone was talking about. They'd forgotten the song existed. Then it got even more tangled, in a way that tells you everything about how fragile this stuff is. When the brothers finally went looking for the original recording to give the fans a clean copy, they couldn't find it. The master tapes were lost. Their own song, the one the whole internet wanted, and they didn't have it either. So they re-recorded it from memory and old fragments, put out a whole album of dusted off 80s material they dug up while searching, and only later managed to track down the actual original. The creators were missing their own creation. Even the people who made the thing had lost the thread back to it. And the crackle, the grimy little crunch in the background of the original clip that everyone had assumed was tape degradation, the sound of a 40-year-old recording falling apart, that wasn't damage. That was the furniture in the scene the song was buried under, doing exactly what furniture does in a film like that. The thing everyone treated as decay was just the song's extremely undignified hiding place leaking through. So that's two grand, romantic, years-long mysteries. One ends with 4 sweet German guys in a box in an attic, the other ends in a movie nobody will admit to having watched, and both endings have the same shape. The answer was never far away, it was just unindexed. In early 2020, someone in Finland posted some photos of a fabric. Curtains, basically cheap printed fabric, and on it were these pop art illustrations of 8 different celebrities, the kind of vaguely traced from a real photo style you'd see on a knockoff. He just wanted to know who they were. Reddit, predictably, knocked out 7 of them fast. There's Jessica Alba, there's Orlando Bloom, there's a couple of guys from the show Lost. Each illustration got matched back to the exact photograph it was traced from. And then there was number 6, a woman. Dark hair, high cheekbones, looking off to the side. And nobody could find her. Not the photo, not the name, nothing. 7 faces fell in an afternoon, and the last one held out for 4.5 years. It became its own thing. Tens of thousands of people in a dedicated subreddit. They contacted the company that made the fabric, which turned out to be some manufacturer in the Czech Republic that had no records and no idea where the image came from. They went through years of stock photography archives by hand, every photo by every photographer who'd shot the other 7 celebrities, hoping she'd been at the same event. They redrew her by hand. They redrew her with AI. They ran every version through every reverse image search that existed. 4.5 years of people treating a stranger's face like a cold case. What cracked it in the end was facial recognition software. One user ran a cleaned up, colored in version of the illustration through a tool that scrapes faces from across the web, and it spat back a Spanish model named Leticia Sarda. Another user tracked down the photographer who'd shot her, an old magazine cover from 2006, and the photographer confirmed it. That was her. The fabric company had used his photo without permission, traced it, and printed it onto curtains, and that traced print had become the most hunted face on the internet. Here's the part that knocks the wind out of me. She had no idea. None. Leticia Sarda had quit modeling back in 2009. She'd gone home to the Canary Islands and built a quiet life. Kids. A small house, regular work, nothing to do with fashion. She wasn't on Reddit. She didn't know there was a subreddit. She didn't know there were tens of thousands of people who had spent years staring at a drawing of her face, building theories, losing sleep, wanting more than anything to know her name. When somebody finally got in touch and asked if she was aware that roughly 50,000 people had been looking for her for 5 years, she thought it was a joke or a scam or a mistake. Think about that gap for a second. The sheer distance between the two sides of it. On one side, a global, obsessive, half-decade search, thousands of people, a real movement, genuine emotional investment. And on the other side, a woman making dinner for her kids, completely outside of it, living the quiet life that was the whole reason she was unfindable in the first place. She wasn't hiding, she just stepped off the internet's map, and the internet decided that meant she was a mystery, when really she was just a person who'd moved on. And then, because this is how it goes now, her quiet life ended. She did an AMA on the subreddit that had been hunting her. People set up a fundraiser. She started posting again, modeling again, the thing she'd walked away from 15 years earlier handed back to her by a crowd of strangers who'd spent longer thinking about her face than some of her own friends had. She said she was, after the initial shock, kind of having fun with it, which is a generous way to handle finding out you were the internet's favorite unsolved problem while you were just trying to live. She was findable the whole time. Same as the band, same as the brothers. The road was just gone. You know the backrooms, the yellow room, the damp carpet, the wallpaper, the fluorescent lights, the photo shot at a slightly wrong angle so the whole thing feels like a place you walked through in a dream and can't prove you ever left. It became one of the biggest horror concepts of the last decade. A whole mythology of endless empty rooms you fall into when you, in the original phrasing, slip out of reality in the wrong spot. There are video games. There's a teenager named Kane Parsons who made a found footage series about it in his bedroom with software he taught himself, pulled in hundreds of millions of views, and turned that into a deal to direct a real movie for A24, which makes him one of the youngest people ever to do that. A horror franchise, a film career, a genuine corner of modern culture, all of it spinning out of a single photo that nobody could place. All of it grew out of one anonymous photo posted to 4chan in 2019. One image of an empty yellow room. Somebody put it up in a thread asking for pictures that just felt wrong, and somebody else replied with a few lines of made-up lore, the idea that if you clip through reality in the wrong spot you fall into this endless honeycomb of empty rooms and stale carpet and buzzing light. That reply was the whole seed. No author, no source, just a creepy room and a paragraph, and from that, a multimedia empire. A big part of why it worked is that the photo shows you almost nothing and lets your brain do the rest. It's the feeling of a place that should be full of people and isn't. The mall after close. The office at 3 in the morning. The school hallway in summer. Familiar and empty at the same time, which is somehow worse than a place that's just scary. And for years, nobody knew where it was taken, which became part of the horror, honestly. The not knowing was the feature. People decided it had to be a 3D render because no real place could feel that off. A room with no origin felt scarier than a room with an address. And then in May 2024, a small group on a Discord server found it. The yellow room is in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. It's the second floor of a building that used to be a furniture store and then became a hobby shop. The photo was taken around 2002 during a renovation while the place was being gutted to put in a track for racing little remote control cars. The reason it looks like that, the temporary walls, the bad light, the water-stained ceiling, the no windows, the air of a place that something terrible is about to happen in, is that it was a construction site with water damage that needed documenting. The owner took some photos of the mess to put on the store's website. One of them had the file name DSC00161. That's the threshold to another dimension, on a hobby shop's renovation blog in Wisconsin. So why did it take so long? The photo was online since 2003. It was public. It was sitting right there for 2 decades. And the answer is the thing I've been circling this entire time. The store's old website died. The domain expired in 2019. The page got eaten, turned into the kind of spam junk that squats on dead web addresses. The only reason anyone found the original at all is that the Wayback Machine, that strange quiet library that archives the internet so the internet doesn't forget itself, had saved a copy before the page rotted away. The photo never moved. The internet just deleted the road that led to it. That's the pattern. That's all 4 of these. The German song, the brothers, the model, the room. We tell ourselves these were mysteries, like somebody hid something, like there was a secret. But nothing was ever hidden. A band kept a tape. A guy left a song in a movie. A model went home to raise her kids. A hobby shop documented a leak. Every single answer was sitting in plain sight, fully public, completely real. The only thing missing was the connection, the link, the little thread that says this goes with that. And the internet is a machine that is unbelievably good at breaking those threads. We act like it remembers everything. It doesn't. It remembers everything and loses the map constantly. The thing survives and the context evaporates, and what's left is an orphan, a real object with no way home. Which is why all of these broke open inside the same year. It wasn't that people suddenly tried harder, it's that the tools changed. Facial recognition that can find one woman from a trace drawing, archives deep enough to resurrect a dead webpage. A generation of searchers who finally stopped staring at the artifact and started hunting for the human on the other end of it. And here's where I have to be honest with you, because the easy version of this story is, isn't it beautiful the internet solved its own mysteries? It is, sort of. Nobody got paid for any of this. There was no prize at the end of the German song, no check waiting for whoever found the yellow room. People did it because not knowing itched, and because doing it together was half the point. One person who reads German finds an old newspaper. One person knows vintage synths. Thousands of strangers pooling tiny scraps in a dozen languages for nothing but the answer. That's a kind of volunteer labor that doesn't really have a name, but there's a cost sitting underneath it that I can't stop thinking about. The same tools that solve these are about to make new ones unsolvable. Not because we won't find an answer, because we won't be able to trust one. When the model was identified, a chunk of the subreddit immediately refused to believe it. Their first instinct wasn't joy, it was suspicion that the photo was AI generated, a fake, and they weren't being paranoid for no reason. We've built machines that can generate a perfectly convincing photograph of a person who was never photographed, a song by a band that never recorded, a room that never existed. The thing that made these old mysteries solvable was that there was always a real artifact at the bottom of it, a real tape, a real negative, a real water-damaged room in Oshkosh. The truth was buried, but it was down there. The next generation of mysteries might not have a bottom. You'll search and find an answer, and the answer will be flawless, and you'll have no way to know if it's real or if a machine generated it to look real. The horror of the Backrooms used to be a room with no origin. The new horror is an answer with no origin. So maybe what actually ended in 2024 wasn't a few specific mysteries. Maybe it was the whole category. The golden age of the solvable mystery. The era when, if enough people cared for long enough, the truth was findable, because the truth was a physical thing that had simply lost its label. We're walking out of that era now. The labels are coming back, all of them, instantly, generated on demand, and we're about to find out that being able to find an answer and being able to believe it were never the same thing. I keep coming back to that kid in Wilhelmshaven though, 40 years ago, trimming the DJ off his tape, being careful, being neat, throwing away the one fact that would have made it simple, and accidentally creating something that thousands of people would pour years of their lives into. He didn't build a mystery, he just wanted a clean copy of a song he loved. The room in Oshkosh is gone now, by the way. They tore out the yellow walls a long time ago. There's a little plastic racetrack up there now, remote control cars whining around in circles where the most haunted image on the internet used to be. Nothing left of it but the hum of those same fluorescent lights, still buzzing, lighting up a room that no longer means anything to anyone who walks through it. That's where the answers always were, in the most ordinary place you could imagine, behind a dead link, on a forgotten tape, in a quiet house on an island, under a flickering light in Wisconsin. Not hidden, just unplugged from the rest of us, waiting for somebody to care enough to find the wire. If you were one of the people who lost a whole night to one of these, the song, the curtains, the yellow room, tell me which one got you, and what year, and don't forget to